All right, for this lesson, you're going to need a notebook so you can take notes. This lesson is going to be called Solving Equations with Squared Variables. So let's do a little review on just solving equations in general. So to solve an equation, we're going to cancel items using inverse operations. Cancel items. Those items might be a term, might be a coefficient, using inverse operations. So we're going to go ahead and define inverse operations again, just to review. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that word, so if I'm looking over my notes later, I see my vocabulary word right there, and I'll have the definition. Easy to find. So inverse operations are two operations that undo each other. Here are some examples. Plus 2 and minus 2. Those are inverse operations. If I do them both, they basically cancel each other out, and there's no change made. Times 6 and divided by 6. If I take a number, multiply by 6, and then divide it by 6, those two operations will undo each other, and I'll end up with the original number. Okay, our learning goal for this lesson. Is to solve equations with squared variables. For example, x squared equals 25. So it's important that you remember that if we square something, it means multiplying it by itself. So in this equation, I'd be looking for, well, what number times itself equals 25? Now, if we're going to solve this using inverse operations, it's important we identify what the inverse operation of this square is. So the inverse operation of squaring a number is taking the square root. If you take the square root of a squared base, the root and the exponent undo each other. For example, if I have x squared and I take the square root of that, this exponent and this root undo each other, and I'm left with just x. So remember, when we're solving an equation, our end goal is to get that variable completely by itself. That includes no exponents other than 1. So that's what we're going to use to solve an equation with a squared variable. So let me show you how to do that now. So example. Solve the following equation. So we're going to start with x squared equals 36. So to solve this equation, we need to take the square root of x squared to get x by itself. So we take the square root, and if I do it to the left side, I have to do it to the right side. So I'm going to take the square root of x squared. Also going to take the square root of 36. Now something interesting is going to happen. Remember, I'm looking for what number times itself equals 36. Well, it turns out there are actually going to be two different answers, because 6 times 6 is 36, but also negative 6 times negative 6 is also 36. So we get two answers. We get x equals negative 6 and x equals positive 6. Or, here's another way you can write it. X equals plus or minus 6. This represents both a positive and a negative 6. So reminder, we have two answers. Since negative 6 squared equals 36 and positive 6 squared also equals 36. I'm going to flip to the next page. We're going to solve 4 equations together. Solve the following equations. First one we're going to solve is x squared equals 49. Second equation, x squared equals 81. Third equation, x squared equals 64. And the last equation, x squared equals 4. Okay. All I have to do is I have to cancel out this square on the left side to get x by itself. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now remember, on the right side, I'm going to end up with two different answers. So I'm going to put the plus or minus there now. Plus or minus the square root of 49. The square root of x squared is x, and I get plus or minus 7. Remembering, this means x equals negative 7 and x equals 7. Okay, what I want you to do now is, if you feel like you got this down, go ahead and press pause, solve the next 3 by yourself, and then come back to the video to see if you got it correct. So now let's go over the other answers. Take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 81 is 9. I get x equals negative 9. And x equals positive 9. Number 3, I have x squared, so I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. I get plus or minus 8. So x equals negative 8, and x equals 8. And last one, again I have x squared. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. I get x equals plus or minus 2. That's how you solve an equation as a squared variable.